I found a letter in my apartment addressed to me, but written 20 years ago. It warned me about an event that is happening now. The envelope was yellowed with age, the ink slightly smudged, but my name was clear. My hands trembled as I unfolded the brittle paper. The first words sent a chill down my spine. If you're reading this, it means everything I feared has come true. The handwriting was eerily familiar. It was mine. But how could that be? The letter detailed events leading up to today's specific moments I had just experienced. It mentioned the power outage that happened an hour ago, the sirens echoing in the distance, and the phone call I received from an unknown number. It described my disbelief, my hesitation. Then it warned me. At exactly 9:13 p.m., do not open the door, no matter what you hear. I glanced at my clock. 9:10 p.m. My heart pounded. I scanned the rest of the letter, desperate for answers. It spoke of a visitor who would arrive soon, someone who looked familiar, but was not to be trusted. They will call your name, beg to be let in. Do not listen. My breath hitched. A loud knock shattered the silence. My body froze. Then, a voice, my own voice, called from the other side. Let me in. I can explain. I staggered back, pulse racing. This was impossible. The letter said I would doubt myself, that fear would creep in. But I must resist. You will want to open the door. You must not, it read. Another knock, more insistent. Please, I don't have much time, the voice pleaded. My hands clenched into fists. My mind screamed at me to run, but my feet wouldn't move. What if the letter was wrong? What if someone needed my help? I reached for the doorknob. The instant my fingers brushed the cold metal, a violent force shook the door. The walls trembled as if something massive was pushing against them. Don't do it, my own voice cried from outside. My grip tightened. Every instinct told me this wasn't right. But then I heard another sound, whispers, laid voices slipping through the cracks. They spoke in a language I didn't understand, yet I felt their meaning deep inside. You belong to us now. I yanked my hand back and stumbled away, heart hammering. The letter's final warning flashed in my mind. If you resist, they will try again. You must leave before it's too late. But how? Where could I go? The whispers grew louder, turning into a deafening hum. My apartment shook. The lights flickered. I grabbed the letter and bolted for the window. The city outside looked unchanged, unaware of the nightmare unfolding within these walls. A sharp crack split the air as the door burst open. I turned, expecting to see a monstrous figure, but instead, I saw myself, or something that wore my face. Its eyes, hollow and black, locked onto mine. I warned you, it whispered with my own voice. Cold terror gripped me as it stepped forward, its movements wrong, distorted. The letter slipped from my shaking hands. I had followed the warning, but was it enough? The figure lunged, and I dove through the window. Glass shattered around me. Wind roared in my ears. Time slowed. For a split second, I saw the apartment implode, the thing inside vanishing into darkness. Then I hit the fire escape, pain exploding through my body. As I gasped for breath, I clutched the letter. Its final words burned into my mind. This is only the beginning. I didn't know who wrote it. But I knew one thing: I wasn't safe. My neighbor started behaving strangely. He seems to copy my habits, clothes, and even conversation. At first, I thought it was a coincidence. We both liked wearing dark hoodies, drinking black coffee, and taking morning walks. But then I noticed the little things. He started ordering the same meals as me, humming the same tunes I played at home. One day, I heard him laughing. It was my laugh, identical in tone and rhythm. My stomach tightened. I decided to test him. The next day, I wore an old band t-shirt I hadn't touched in years. An hour later, I saw him in an identical one. My heart pounded. At the CAF, I ordered a drink I'd never tried before. He did the same, down to the exact modifications. When I greeted my barista with a phrase I made up on the spot, he repeated it word for word. He didn't even seem aware he was doing it. But his eyes were watching me too closely. Things escalated fast. One night, I saw him through his window, practicing my gestures in the mirror. He nodded, tilted his head, even ran his fingers through his hair just as I did. My breath caught when he began whispering, mouthing words I couldn't hear but knew were mine. I slammed my blinds shut, but the unease stayed. Who was he? Why was he doing this? I decided to confront him. I needed answers before things got worse. The next morning, I knocked on his door. He opened it almost instantly, as if waiting. Seeing him up close sent a chill down my spine. His face was mine. Not similar, not resembling, identical. I stumbled back. He smiled, my own smirk staring back at me. I was wondering when you'd come, he said in my voice. My throat went dry. My own doppelganger stood before me, calm, expectant. We need to talk, he added, stepping aside. I hesitated, but stepped in. His apartment was a mirror of mine, same furniture, same books, even the same dent on the coffee table. My pulse pounded. Who are you? I demanded. He chuckled. I am you. Or rather, I am becoming you. My skin prickled. That's insane, I whispered. Is it? He asked, tilting his head just like I did when curious. Every day, I get a little more like you. Soon, I'll be perfect. A shiver ran down my spine. I backed away, but he followed, his movements eerily synchronized with mine. I don't understand, I stammered. You will, he assured me. Once I finish. A sharp knock interrupted us. My stomach flipped. Another me stood in the doorway, expression unreadable. He's not ready, the new one said. My neighbor, my copy sighed. I thought he was. The world tilted. How many of you are there? I gasped. No one answered. The two identical figures exchanged glances before turning to me. You should rest, one said. It'll be easier that way. My muscles locked as an unnatural drowsiness flooded my body. I staggered. No, I mumbled, but my vision blurred. I fought to stay awake, to move, but my limbs grew heavy. Don't worry, the first doppelganger whispered, catching me as I fell. We'll take care of everything, then. The darkness swallowed me whole. When I woke up, the apartment was silent. My head throbbed. I stumbled to the mirror, dreading what I might see. My reflection blinked back at me, familiar yet wrong. My eyes weren't mine. I touched my face, heart hammering. My movements felt off, unfamiliar. I turned to the window, watching a man walk past wearing my clothes, drinking my coffee, laughing my laugh. My neighbor, or maybe the real me. I received a call from an unknown number. Someone on the other end said, I know what you did last summer. My breath caught. The voice was low, distorted. Who is this? I asked, but the line went dead. My hands shook as I set my phone down. It had to be a prank, someone messing with me. But deep down, I knew better. Last summer, something had happened. Something I had buried, hoping no one would ever bring it up again. I told myself it was a coincidence, but unease lingered. That night, I couldn't sleep. Memories clawed their way to the surface, the deserted road, the headlights, the impact. My pulse quickened. No one had been around. No cameras, no witnesses. At least, that's what I had thought. My phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. This time, a message. You can't ignore me forever. My stomach twisted. Someone new. I paced my apartment, trying to think. Could it be one of the others? We had promised never to talk about it. I grabbed my phone and called Jake. He picked up on the second ring. Did you get a call? I blurted out. Silence. Then, a shaky exhale. Yeah, he admitted. Same words. Same voice. A cold sweat formed on my neck. Who could it be? I whispered. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. We both knew the only person who should know was dead. The next message came at a.m. Meet me where it happened. Midnight. My mouth went dry. Was this a trap? A trick. I texted Jake. We have to go. He hesitated before replying. We don't have a choice. That night, we drove in silence. The road felt endless, the weight of last summer pressing down on us. When we arrived, the air was thick, suffocating. Then, headlights flared in the darkness. Someone else was here. A figure stepped forward, hood pulled low. You took something from me, the voice said. It was them, the one we thought was gone. My chest tightened. You? My words died as they lifted their head. Their face was pale to pale, their eyes hollow. I waited, they rasped. Now it's your turn. The air grew heavy, the wind still. Jake grabbed my arm. We need to go, he hissed. But my legs wouldn't move. The figure raised a hand, and suddenly, I couldn't breathe. My throat tightened, as if unseen fingers were closing around it. Jake stumbled backward, gasping. Please, I choked out. The figure smiled, but it wasn't human. Did you beg for mercy that night? My mind spun. No, this wasn't real. It couldn't be. You left me, they whispered. Now, you stay. Darkness swirled around them, tendrils creeping toward me. Jake screamed, but the sound was distant. Shadows wrapped around my arms, pulling me down, the road vanishing beneath me. I clawed at the air, desperate. I'm sorry, I shouted, my voice cracking. The figure tilted its head, considering. Then, they let go. I hit the ground, gasping. Jake pulled me up. The figure was gone. Only silence remained. But something told me this wasn't over. We drove away, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we had only delayed the inevitable. My phone buzzed one last time. A new message. See you next summer. My blood ran cold. I stared into the night, knowing the truth I had escaped, but not for long. Whatever we had done, it wasn't finished, and next time there would be no running. I found an old album in my locker with pictures of me with people I've never met. The leather cover was cracked, its pages yellowed with age. My hands trembled as I flipped through it. There I was, smiling at a birthday party, posing at the beach, laughing with strangers whose faces meant nothing to me. My mind raced. I had no memory of these moments, no recollection of ever being there. Yet, the photos were real to real. I scanned every picture, searching for something familiar. The settings, the clothes, the people, none of them sparked recognition. Then, I noticed something chilling. In every photo, I looked exactly the same. My hair, my posture, even my expression had never changed. Whether the picture was set in summer or winter, whether I was a child or an adult, I remained frozen in time. My pulse quickened. This was impossible. I checked the dates scribbled on the back of some photos. 1992, 1984, 1977. My breath caught. I wasn't even born then. I turned the pages faster, dread creeping up my spine. More pictures, me in black and white fill, me in faded Polaroids. Decades before my birth, I was there. My head spun. A final photo fell from the album, landing face down. My name was written on the back in shaky ink. I flipped it over, and my stomach dropped. It was me, but not just me. A man stood beside me, his arm draped over my shoulder. His face was blurred, distorted as if the camera had failed to capture it properly. But his posture, his stance, it was identical to mine. I ran my fingers over the image, feeling the paper tremble. Then, the locker door behind me creaked open. I turned sharply, but no one was there. A whisper echoed through the hallway. "Do you remember now?" My chest tightened. The voice was familiar to familiar. I glanced back at the photo. The man's face was no longer blurred. My blood ran cold. It was me, older, worn, eyes filled with something I couldn't understand. My hands shook as I slammed the album shut. This was a trick, a cruel joke. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. A sharp pain shot through my head, memories crashing down like a wave, flashes of laughter, voices calling my name, places I had never been yet somehow knew. My mind struggled to make sense of it. I had lived these moments, hadn't I? The air grew thick, the hallway stretching endlessly. The pictures, the people, they were waiting for me to remember. But if I did, what would happen next? My phone vibrated. A new message. I hesitated before looking. "Come home," it read. No number, no name, just two words, heavy with meaning. My fingers hovered over the screen. The whisper returned, closer this time. It's time. My heart pounded as the hallway darkened. The album, the photos, the face in the picture, I wasn't supposed to find them. But now that I had, there was no turning back. The walls trembled. The air crackled. The last thing I saw before the darkness swallowed me was my own reflection in the locker mirror, watching, waiting. Then everything faded. The album slipped from my hands, pages fluttering. The pictures had changed. The strangers were gone. Now there was only me. Me in every moment, every year, trapped, just like before. My grandmother always said that our house was haunted, but after she died, I started hearing her voice. At first, it was faint, just a whisper in the wind, a soft murmur at night. I told myself it was my imagination, a trick of grief. But then it grew clearer. "I'm still here," she said one evening, her voice drifting through the empty kitchen. My blood ran cold. I turned, expecting to see her frail figure, but I was alone. I tried to ignore it, but the whispers followed me. When I brushed my teeth, she hummed behind me. When I lay in bed, she sighed in the dark. Then objects started moving. Her old rocking chair swayed on its own. Her favorite teacup appeared on the table, filled with steaming tea. One morning, I found my bedroom door locked from the inside. I stood frozen as her voice came from within. "Let me in," she whispered. I searched for answers, flipping through her old journals, hoping to find some clue. Instead, I found something far worse. A passage scrawled in shaky handwriting. "The house keeps us. Even after we're gone, it won't let us leave." My breath hitched. Had she known? Had she been trapped here long before her death? I slammed the book shut, my hands trembling. If she was still here, was she trying to warn me or something else? That night, I dreamt of her. She stood at my door, her face pale, her eyes too dark. "You have to listen," she said, reaching out. I jolted awake, drenched in sweat. My door was open. I was sure I had locked it. The air smelled of her lavender perfume. A chill ran down my spine. "I'm listening," I whispered. The air grew thick, as if the house itself was holding its breath. Then her voice came again, desperate this time. They won't let me go, she said. The walls groaned. The lights flickered. Who? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Silence. Then, a creaking sound, her rocking chair moving on its own. The shadows in the corner deepened, shifting unnaturally. Run, she finally said. My pulse pounded. The floorboards beneath me felt unsteady, as if something was moving beneath them. I stumbled back, heart racing. The whispers weren't just hers anymore. Other voices joined in, murmuring things I couldn't understand. The wall shuddered. I grabbed my keys and bolted for the door, but it wouldn't budge. Cold fingers brushed my shoulder. Stay, a voice hissed. I screamed, pushing against the door with all my strength. Then, suddenly, everything went still. The house fell silent. My grandmother's voice was gone. But I knew it wasn't over. I spent the night in my car, too afraid to go back inside. When dawn broke, I stepped onto the porch. The house looked the same, but something felt different. I pushed the door open cautiously. The rocking chair was still. The air was quiet. For the first time in weeks, I felt alone. But as I turned to leave, something on the table caught my eye, her teacup, still warm. My stomach dropped. She was still here. I never saw her again, never heard her voice. But sometimes, at night, I feel her watching. The house keeps its secrets. It keeps its dead. And though I try to move on, I know the truth. My grandmother never left. She never could. And one day, neither will I. I found someone else's bag in my car. Inside were money, a gun, and a picture of me with the words, "You know what to do." My hands shook as I flipped the photo over, searching for more clues. Nothing. My mind raced. I hadn't let anyone into my car. The doors had been locked. Had someone broken in? And why me? I glanced around the empty parking lot, my heart pounding. Whoever left this knew me. They were watching. I grabbed the bag and ran inside, locking my apartment door behind me. The gun felt heavy in my hands. I wasn't a criminal. I had never even held a gun before. My phone buzzed, and I nearly dropped it. Unknown number. The message read, "No police. Do it tonight." My stomach twisted. Do what? I dumped the bag onto my kitchen table. The stack of bills was thick, crisp, more money than I'd ever seen. I checked the photo again. It was me, but not any picture I remember taking. I was standing outside a CAF mid-laugh. Who took this? I flipped through my memories, trying to recall if I had ever noticed someone watching me. My phone buzzed again. Midnight. Don't be late. A location pin followed. My breath hitched. If I ignored this, what would happen? If I followed through, what was I walking into? The hours passed in a blur of paranoia. I checked the locks, peered out the window, paced the room. Midnight came too fast. My hands trembled as I drove to the address. A warehouse. Empty. A single light flickered above the entrance. I stepped out, the gun tucked in my jacket, the money in the bag. The moment I did, my phone buzzed again. Good. Now inside, a figure stood in the shadows, waiting. I moved closer, every muscle in my body screaming to run. The figure stepped forward, revealing a familiar face mine. My own reflection stared back at me, cold and unreadable. Finally, he said, his voice eerily calm. I couldn't speak. "You're late," he added, glancing at the bag. "But you brought everything." My knees felt weak. This wasn't real. It couldn't be. What is this? I croaked. He smiled. A test. He reached into his pocket and pulled out an identical gun. "There can only be one of us," he said simply. The air thickened with tension. "I don't understand," I stammered. He sighed. "You will." In one swift motion, he raised his gun. Instinct took over. I ducked, my own weapon clutched in my hand. The shot rang out, deafening in the stillness. Pain seared through my arm. He wasn't holding back. I fired blindly, adrenaline surging through me. Silence followed. When I opened my eyes, he was gone. The money, the bag, the gun all vanished. My car keys lay at my feet, as if none of it had happened. I checked my phone. No messages. No location pin. My hands trembled as I climbed into my car and drove home. My reflection in the rearview mirror stared back, but something felt off. The next morning, I checked my car again. Nothing. No bag. No evidence. Just a single slip of paper tucked under my windshield wiper. 5 words, scrawled in my own handwriting. "You passed. See you soon." My blood ran cold. Whatever this was, it wasn't over. It had only just begun.